Hello again, and welcome to my 13 Horrifically Silly Days of Halloween series. Today I'm here with my guest, John Migliore. John,
Hello.
welcome. Please tell me a bit about yourself, your background, and what you're currently working on right now.
Sure. I'm an actor that's primarily in a lot of indie films, particularly horror films, but not just horror films. I started off by doing a lot of background work. I was a teacher actually for 20 years, 25 years. And I did some background work while I was a teacher and found out that I really enjoyed it and liked it. And then I retired early, and I started doing movie stuff. So that's basically who I am.
Very cool. What grade or what did you teach?
I was an elementary school teacher, so I taught anything from grade 4 to grade 8 over that long period of time.
Oh, terrific, cool. My stepdad was an elementary school principal, and my mom was an elementary school secretary. So that's cool to know. Anyway,
Nothing
and
too,
I know a couple
nothing
teachers
too
myself, obviously. Yeah. All right. So you got into the whole background thing, and it turned into a film career and a filmmaking career.
yeah.
I wanted to talk about something you released fairly recently, but has been sort of a long time coming. Curse of the Voodoo Sock Puppet, the Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet. Do I
The
have that all
Bloody
right?
Voodoo Song. Yes, that's very
Yeah,
good.
yeah. If you could give me and the viewers a summary of what the film's about, but also its history and background, because it was shot in two completely different decades, and that would be terrific. Yeah,
And not
please.
even consecutive decades.
Exactly. Yeah. No, please do tell.
So in the late 80s and early 90s, as well as teaching, I was writing for comic books, again, indie comics.
Yes.
And I was working on a series called Lethargic Comics. And at the time, I was writing a character called The Grad, which was like a horror comic
Okay.
and the horror comedy. And this character, the Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet, was something that we developed as an idea for a movie, but it was also a character in the comics.
Okay.
So that the Grad would fight. So I put together this idea for the first movie in 1990, and we made Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet, and we made it in 5 days on VHS, and it's terrible. The first movie's really like hard to watch and get through. And then 2 years later, we did a sequel called Curse of the Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet.
Cool.
And we had better special effects. It was much funnier. There was all kinds of crazy shenanigans going on. It was just a superior product.
Okay.
And both of those movies we sold on VHS at the time through through the mail, through Lethargic Comics, but also um, through other means. Like there were always all these like little independent magazines that you could, always sell things through and get ads in. So
Cool.
we sold a bunch back in the day,
Mhm.
and then I forgot about it.
Right.
And then in the last year or so, I got an old VHS camera that I could use to transfer video to my computer.
Right.
And one of the first things that I pulled out was, oh, look at this. I haven't seen this in decades. And so I digitally transferred the first movie, and it was bad. And then I digitally transferred the second one, and it's cheesy, but it's funny.
Mhm.
And so I was kind of happy with what came of it. And then I got this idea to take the movie and combine it with the first movie and add new scenes that we shot in 2019. So that by the time we released it at the beginning of this year, it's been 30 years since the original film. and the film that was made out of these, Frankenstein pieces,
Hmm.
actually connects to the last film I made, which
Yes.
was Creature from Cannibal Creek.
Right.
So it's all strangely connected.
So, a creature from Creek, that you had characters basically from that movie narrating the story of the Curse of the Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet, correct?
Right, and
Yes.
the idea that I was trying to give is that the crazy psycho families from the old movie and the crazy psycho family from the new movie are actually related to each other. So it kind
Ah,
of ties it all together.
small meshes. Very, very cool. And so, what is basically, in summary, without giving anything important away, the story arc of Voodoo Sock Puppet?
Uh, there's a sock puppet killer who um, dies at the very beginning of this movie. He was controlled by his sock puppet. He had all kinds of mental issues, was going around killing people. And um, and the only way he could get out of being controlled by this puppet was to kill himself. But then an evil scientist known as Dr. Scissors resurrects him and makes him one of his evil zombies so that he can use the sock puppet to get bodies for him so he can continue his experiments.
Of course, yes. It's the practical thing to do
Yeah.
if you're
It's
in
a
that position
typical
as a
love
mad
story.
scientist. Yeah. And perhaps could you tell me a little about the story arc for Creatures from Cannibal Creek?
Yeah, Creature from Cannibal Creek. The idea is that there is a crazy cannibal family that lives in a farm in the middle of the woods, and they capture people and eat them.
Mhm.
So they captured somebody a while back that um, someone else decides to investigate, try to find out where they are, what's become of them, and then the new person gets caught as well, and he has a little bit of a tussle with one of the cannibals, and they leave him for dead, but he doesn't die, at least not right away. He crawls out into the enchanted forest, which grows over top of him, and he becomes this kind of swamp thing, kind of
Creature.
muck monster.
Right. Yes. Oh, cool. All right. And no, sorry, has it been released?
We've had a premiere at the Hexploitation Film Festival,
Okay.
and I have a distributor for the movie. It's just they haven't made the announcement yet, so
Right.
I don't know when it's coming out or whatever else. But there will be, I'm hoping before the end of this year, a DVD release and probably a video on demand release.
Cool. Perfect. All right. And where can people see Curse of the Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet?
Curse of the Bloody Voodoo Sock Puppet is on my Vimeo page. It's an on-demand movie. So it's on Vimeo. My channel's called Survival Zombie Films,
Okay.
and you'll find it there. It's $1 to rent because I figured I'm just going to keep it. I just want people to see it. It's just this
Yeah.
fun, crazy little movie. So yeah, it costs about $1 to rent, and it's on that site. And on that site as well is a lot of um, free content. So I did a show called Midnight Movie Palace. It's on that channel.
Okay.
So partially devoured movies, and plus a lot of short films that I've made over the years are all on that channel.
Great. Okay, and which I will put a link to for sure, so people can find you very easily via this blog. And okay, well, since you mentioned Midnight Movie Palace, let's talk about that for a little bit. And Johnny Goulash as well.
Goulash.
Yeah.
So I'll back up a bit before Midnight Movie Palace, since you
Okay.
want to talk about Johnny Goulash.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
idea, the idea with Johnny Goulash was way back when I began. I think it was 2012.
Mhm.
Um, I saw a need to get more acting work,
Ah.
and um, the problem that I'm sure most actors have is, they're not satisfied with how much work they're getting. And so, you start to look at ways to create work.
Right.
So what I did was, I created this character, Johnny Goulash, and I created a show around him, called Partially Devoured Movies.
Yeah.
And we did 2 seasons of that back in 2012, 13, and 13, 14.
Mm-hmm.
And those 2 seasons, you can see them on the Vimeo channel. You can see them on Chop Block TV,
Okay.
which is on Roku and Amazon Fire. So there's a lot of different places you can see it. And
Okay.
there's actually a couple other Roku channels that are like horror channels that carry the show as well. So it's kind of all over the place.
All right, great.
But
It's a series that devours movies. It's
that's
partially
that's exactly what it is. So
regurgitates them.
basically, back in 2012, I was talking to somebody about all of these horror hosts that are on TV, and I love horror hosts,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what Johnny Goulash became, as a horror host.
Exactly.
But
Yep.
one of my sticking things with horror hosts is they come on usually at the beginning of a movie. Maybe they interrupt every 20 minutes or so with a comment or two, and then that's it. And then because they're always showing public domain movies, these are movies I've seen over and over and over again with all these different horror hosts. So one of the things that bothered me was the idea of, you're going to be a horror host and you're going to do the same movie again. What makes it different
Mm-hmm.
than what everyone else is doing? Either that, or I'm just going to scan to your parts that are funny and just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So with Partially Devoured Movies, the idea I came up with is, how about a horror host show that isn't the full length of the movie? It's 20 minutes long, 22 minutes long.
Right.
And the movie is cut down to 15 minutes.
Right.
And then there's 5 to 7 minutes of shenanigans with the hosts and with whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't just take that movie that's an hour and a half and just cut out random 15 minutes. I actually cut it in such a way that it still tells a story.
Okay.
So that's why it's partially devoured. You kind of get the whole story, but there's,
Yeah, you don't see everything.
yeah,
Yeah.
subplots are missing, and they're major characters that you don't see once. And as long as the main story is there.
Right.
So
Very cool.
yeah, and the funny bits around the movie are fun to shoot. And then during the movie, instead of having cutaway moments like a lot of hosts do,
Right.
where they cut away and then they say a line and then they go back to the movie,
Right.
it's all voiceover. So like Johnny interrupts the movie constantly. Like, 20 seconds go by and he makes another comment and he makes another comment. So
kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000-ish, without having the movie theater, the little robots there and so forth. Yeah.
yes, it's much more like that, but in a really condensed version.
Yeah, exactly. So the Midnight Movie Palace TV series.
Yeah. So what happened after Partially Devoured Movies, we did those 2 seasons. I didn't want to do a 3rd season because the editing the movies down from an hour and a half to 15 minutes, it's brutal. It's hours and hours of work to make it look like there's no cuts. Like it's just
Wow.
So, and I had this cool idea where I thought, if people could give me original material instead of having, the same old public domain movies all the time,
Right.
I could show people shorts or trailers for little indie movies that maybe wouldn't get their trailer seen in the same way without the show. So it was great. I only did 1 season. We did, I don't even remember. It's either 6 or 8 episodes.
Okay.
I think it's 8 episodes. I can't even remember. But the reason we stopped doing it was simply because it was really hard to get people's films for the show and yet still leave it open where, well, what if I want to send this to a film festival? Or
Oh
what
yeah.
if I want to, put this in an anthology film and it's already in your show?
Mhm.
So the legalities of it became very difficult. And we managed to get, I think, a bunch of good shows, but it was really hard to continue that show because of those issues.
Yeah, yeah. You don't really think about that stuff, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, just as a casual viewer, if you're not in the filmmaking or distribution biz, yeah, it's that stuff. Yeah. Oh well. Now switching gears to, I wanted to talk about your. You made a couple very short films for the Corman Quarantine Film Festival Challenge. This was Roger Corman. We're all in quarantine. He wanted us, us filmmakers, especially indie, low budget filmmakers, to make him films in quarantine to show on Twitter and Facebook and any other social media we wanted to get it out on under 2 minutes in our own homes and backyards. Please tell me about your two films that you did.
I actually did three in the end.
Three. Oh, I
And,
missed one. I
and
must see it.
the first one was called something in the void. I don't even my memory's terrible. Okay,
I,
like I made this short film 3 weeks ago, and I've already forgotten the title. Um,
if you're cool with it, I'll have links to them so people will be able to find out what their titles are and see them and
I tell
everything.
you, my memory is awful.
No
Anyway,
worries.
I made this In the Void movie,
Yeah.
and this was about a week before the Corman Challenge, and
Okay.
it was over 3 minutes long, and it was fun. I did it just as a quarantine thing,
Yeah.
and what was great about it was Deborah Jane Riley Smith, who's in a lot of my films,
Mm.
filmed herself in her home. I filmed myself here, and Mike Treblecock, who does a lot of the music for my movies and other people's movies, he did the music at his home, and then I put it all together, and we just transferred files among each other, which
Yeah.
was fun.
Yeah.
So um, I did that, and that one I wanted it to be kind of this dark, brooding. The whole thing's in red, and it's like you're in hell. It's a very, very odd little film. I
Cool.
can't describe it very well. It's very odd. And then the second one I did was one about a cat owner
Yeah.
who had lost his cat
Yeah.
and was in quarantine and kept walking around his house and finding, evidence of the cat that used to be there.
Yeah.
And then it has a bit of an oddball surprise ending.
Yeah. Which we'll leave it at that. People.
It's a minute and a half long. They'll watch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It's and the third.
The third one is weird little film that we called My Mom Punches Harder.
Mhm.
And it's about a stuffed sheep puppet who is about the size of Godzilla, and he goes through a town destroying it, and he just keeps saying over and over, "Mom punches harder," and he's just wrecking everything, and then that also leads to a bit of a surprise ending.
Yeah. Yeah.
but, but that comes from, because I know you're going to have to ask, like, why a sheep, why my mom punches harder.
Yeah.
It comes from when my kids were small, we had puppets, and we used to make little videos and stuff with the puppets. And we had this little sheep puppet. And it's the same one that my daughter had when she was small.
Cool.
And we did this farm video where all the puppets were talking. And then at one point, my daughter with her puppet turns to another puppet and says, "My mom punches harder." And I was like, where did this come from? And I was like, worried, like, where did you hear this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it turns out my son and I had been playing a Rocky game on PS2 way back in the day. And one of the taunts was what the boxers would say to each other: "My mom punches harder than you." And that's where my daughter got it from.
That's so cute.
Yeah, so that's how it led to this bizarre video I made recently.
Nice. Well, I'm happy there was a puppet one. I do like to see a puppet in a horror or horror comedy, when possible. That's, yeah, it's cool.